Good evening, sleepy soul. Welcome back to another quiet story from the Sleepless Nun. Tonight, we journey backwards through time's veil to the women who came before. Before crosses, before habits, before Christianity gave loneliness a uniform. Dim your lights now. Let the darkness settle like silk around your shoulders. Close your eyes if they're ready, or let them rest, half-lidded, on nothing at all. Tonight is for drifting, for floating between waking and sleeping, between history and dream, between the world you know and the one that was. Take a breath with me, deep and slow. Feel how the air fills spaces you forgot you had. Now release it, and with it, let go of today. Let go of tomorrow. Let go of everything except this moment, this story, this journey we're about to take together. Tonight, we meet the first daughters of divine silence, the priestesses who married gods when gods still walked among mortals, the virgins who tended flames that must never die, the dancers who moved like prayers in temples older than memory, women who chose the eternal over the everyday, the sacred over the simple, the vast over the intimate. In ancient Greece, we'll breathe the sacred vapors with Cassandra, the potter's daughter who becomes the Oracle of Delphi. Feel her transform from girl to God's mouthpiece, speaking truths that crack kingdoms open like eggs. Watch her pay the price of divine possession. To be filled with heaven means being emptied of self. From there, we'll climb the ziggurat in Mesopotamia with Shamhat, painted in pomegranate and gold, chosen as Inanna's sacred prostitute. Not prostitute as the word wounds us now, but as gateway between flesh and spirit, teaching that holiness isn't always pure, that sometimes the sacred comes wrapped in scandal. We'll tend the eternal flame in Rome with Claudia, counting the days of her 30-year sentence. 18 years down, 12 to go. Watch her feed the fire that feeds on her, that promises empire eternal while stealing her mortal years. Rome's most honored prisoner, wrapped in white wool and public reverence, powerful in every way except the one that matters, the freedom to choose her own life. In Egypt, we'll unlock the sanctuary before dawn with Nefertiti, not the queen, but the last priestess of Isis in her temple, the last keeper of mysteries that stretch back to the first flood. Tomorrow the Greeks close her temple. Tonight she marries a dead god in a ceremony that will echo through eternity. We'll dance until our feet bleed in Indian temples with Sundaravali, the girl who forgot her own name but remembers every mudra, every stance, every sacred gesture. Wed to stone Shiva at 7, she becomes art itself, too pure for human touch, too human for divine union, suspended forever between earth and heaven. In the Egyptian desert, we'll fast with Amma Syncletica, 70 years old and preparing for her final transformation. 40 days without food, 7 without water. Seeking the silence beneath silence, the nothing that contains everything. Watch her teach us that some kinds of dying are actually birth. We'll breathe through sacred cloth with Golnar in Persia, wed to a flame that must burn for 1,000 years. Even her exhalations are too mortal for Ahura Mazda's fire. She speaks to it in the old tongue, feeds it with sandalwood and frankincense, understanding that they are the same, sacred, necessary, and utterly constrained. And finally, in a place outside time, we'll witness them all converge. Every priestess, every sacred virgin, every woman who chose God over lover. Watch as they transform into the nuns yet to come, the anchorites yet to wall themselves in, the mystics yet to write their visions. The thread continues unbroken from temple to convent, from oracle to abbess, from then to now to always. They wore different robes, spoke different vows, served different gods, but the ache was the same. That particular hollow between the ribs where human love might have lived had they chosen differently. The same loneliness that tastes like incense and sounds like midnight prayers and feels like being everything to everyone and nothing to yourself. These are not easy stories. They're stories of beauty and terror, of power and powerlessness, of women who gained heaven by giving up earth. They're stories that ask, what is the price of touching the divine? What does it cost to become a bridge between worlds? How much of yourself can you give away and still exist? But they are also stories of incredible strength, of women who shaped civilizations from their prison temples, who spoke truths that toppled kingdoms, who preserved mysteries through dark ages, who became living prayers, breathing bridges, dancing doorways between the human and divine. If this journey brings you stillness, if these forgotten voices help you drift into the sweetest sleep, tap subscribe when you're ready. Your support helps these ancient stories find new dreamers. But for now, just breathe, just listen, just let yourself be carried backward through time to where it all began. We begin in Delphi, where the mountain breathes prophecy through cracks in the earth, where a 19-year-old girl named Cassandra kneels by a sacred spring, washing her face for the last time as herself. In a few hours, she'll drink the sacred waters. She'll breathe the holy vapors. She'll open her mouth, and Apollo will speak through her, turning her into the most powerful woman in Greece and the loneliest soul on the mountain. Come, the ancient world is waiting. The first of our sacred daughters is about to lose her name and find her purpose. The transformation begins now. She was 6 when they chose her, 13 when she understood what it meant, 19 now, breathing the last free breaths of her mortal life. Listen, do you hear the mountain speaking? Mount Parnassus has cracks in its skin where the earth's own breath escapes. Sweet vapors that smell of endings and beginnings, of prophecy and poison. Today, Cassandra will breathe them deep. Today, she stops being a potter's daughter and becomes the god's own throat. The sacred spring bubbles up from stone older than memory. She kneels beside it in the pre-dawn darkness, washing her face with water that tastes of minerals and fate. Her reflection ripples and reforms. Dark eyes that have already seen too much, sharp bones that will grow sharper with fasting, a mouth that will soon speak words that topple kingdoms. It's time, the Hierophant says behind her. Ancient voice for an ancient ritual. She doesn't turn. In the water, she sees all the girls she'll never become. The wife, the mother, the grandmother, surrounded by ordinary love. They dissolve like salt, like dreams, like everything she might have wanted if the god hadn't wanted her first. The ritual bath steams with sacred herbs, bay laurel that Apollo loves, cypress for transformation, myrrh for the marriage between human and divine. They strip her without ceremony. The priests have done this before. We'll do it again. Her body is just another vessel to be prepared, Another cup to be emptied before filling. But water receives her like prophecy itself. Too hot, too cold, impossible to define. She sinks until only her face breaks the surface. And even that feels like too much humanity showing. Around her, the priestesses chant in the tongue that predates Greek, that was old when the Titans walked. The words bypass her mind and lodge in her spine like hooks. Memory rises with the steam. Her mother teaching her to shape clay, the specific weight of wet earth between small fingers. Feel how it knows what it wants to be, her mother said. You just help it remember. Her sister's wedding last summer, white roses in dark hair, joy that Cassandra will never wear. The honey cakes at the last festival, sweet enough to make your teeth ache, before the visions grew teeth of their own. Let them go, the water whispers. Let them sink. Memory makes poor priestesses. She opens her hands beneath the surface and feels something escape. Not the memories themselves, those will haunt her forever, but her claim to them. They become stories about someone else, a girl she used to know, a girl who's drowning in sacred water while everyone watches and calls it holy. The Auditon waits like the mountain's mouth, this inner sanctum where only Pythias may enter, where the earth cracks open and leaks divine madness. No windows, one door. Walls that sweat with condensation from the vapors below. The air tastes metallic, wrong, like licking the blade of a sacrificial knife. The tripod sits over the fissure. 3 bronze legs holding nothing but possibility. The vapors rise through it, visible in the lamplight, twisting like the god's own thoughts taking form. This is her throne, her marriage bed, her crucifix. Daughter of earth and sky, do you come willingly? The ritual question. What would happen if she said no? If she ran now, naked and dripping, out into the dawn where shepherds move their flocks? But her mouth opens, speaks the words carved in her bones. I come. Will you surrender your name, your past, your mortal life? Cassandra, it means she who entangles men. Her father chose it, hoping for beauty, for good marriage prospects, for grandsons to carry his line. Instead, he got a girl whose beauty turned inward, whose eyes saw too much, who entangled only herself in the god's golden. The vapors hit her lungs like wine, like drowning, like being born in reverse. She grips the tripod as the world unfolds, not tilts, unfolds, showing its hidden mechanics. Time becomes honey, past and future mix, until she can't tell if she's remembering or foreseeing. Her mother at the loom, threads running backward. Blood on marble steps that haven't been built yet. A king asking about war, his face in shadow. The temple fallen, tourists with strange boxes capturing its ruins. The first oracle cutting out her own tongue to make room for God's voice. Like honey poured into an empty jar. Golden, heavy, entirely overwhelming. He floods every empty space inside her. And she hadn't known how empty she was until this filling. Light too bright for mortal vessels. Music that makes her bones sing harmonies they were never meant to know. Cassandra vanishes, not dies. Vanishing is cleaner, more complete. What remains is Pythia. The title, the function, the space between lightning and thunder, where God speaks to man. She opens her mouth, and someone else's voice emerges. Neither male nor female, neither young nor old. The voice of the space between things, the pause between heartbeats, the silence that swallows stars. The priests lean close to interpret, but the message is crystal clear. The girl you knew is gone. The god has eaten her name. What speaks now is the echo of eternity, bouncing off the walls of a mortal throat. Time becomes strange in the Adyton. She is herself, 19, virgin, terrified. She is every Pythia before her, stretching back to the world's morning. She is no one at all, just a gap in existence where prophecy pools. The god uses her completely, shows her the threads connecting all things, the machinery of fate, why oracles go mad. Too much truth for a mortal cup. Dawn finds her still on the tripod, legs numb, throat raw from speaking God words. They lift her carefully. These priests who've seen possession before. They dress her in purple silk, heavy with gold thread. Crown her with laurel. Name her what she's become. Pythia. It fits like a shroud. The first petitioner waits, a merchant wanting to know about his ships. She opens her mouth, and Apollo stirs inside like a serpent waking. The prophecy pours out in riddles because truth itself is riddled with holes. The merchant leaves satisfied and terrified. More will come. They always come, wanting certainty from uncertainty, wanting human answers from inhuman sources. This is her life now, sitting on this tripod, breathing poison, speaking tomorrow's disasters in today's voice. She will do this for 40 years. She will never marry, never bear children, never taste food without ash, sleep without visions, wake without wondering who she is. The god has hollowed her out and moved in permanently. She is the bride of absence, the wife of wisdom that drives men mad, the mother of truths no one wants to hear. But that's later. That's the slow tragedy that unfolds prophecy by prophecy. For now, she simply speaks. Words pour out like blood from a wound. And though she wears no cross, bears no Christian symbols, she is the first in the long line of women who will choose God over lover, service over self. The thread begins here, with her, with this morning when a girl became a function, a daughter became a deity. A human became the space where human and divine collide and create prophecy. The oracle speaks. The god possesses. And somewhere in the collision, a new kind of loneliness is born. The loneliness of being everything to everyone and nothing to yourself. The loneliness of carrying heaven in your throat while your heart starves for a simple human touch. This is how holiness happens. This is the price of prophecy. This is why some bridges between worlds are built from the bones of the women who become them. The oracle's voice fades into ancient smoke, and from the dust of Mesopotamia, another sacred bride prepares to climb toward heaven. They paint her lips with crushed pomegranate. They braid her hair with gold. They dress her like a bride, though her bridegroom is the sky itself. Listen, do you hear the drums? They've been beating since dawn, calling the faithful to witness what shouldn't be witnessed. Shamhat stands in the preparation chamber as temple artists transform her from merchant's daughter into something worth sacrificing. 7 days ago, she was helping her mother card wool. Tonight, she climbs the ziggurat to marry absence itself. The goddess came to her in a dream, naked and terrible, wearing nothing but a crown of stars and a necklace of skulls. "You will be my mouth," Inanna said, "my hands, my holy. Through you I will teach men why they fear women and desire them in equal measure. You don't refuse a goddess, not when she shows you two futures, one small and safe and forgettable, the other vast and dangerous and eternal. Not when she reaches into your chest and shows you the fire that's been waiting there all along. The kohl around her eyes isn't cosmetic. It's to help her see in the darkness between worlds. The gold paint on her skin isn't decoration, but armor against the 1,000 small deaths she'll die in service. The pomegranate on her lips is the taste of the underworld, where Inanna herself descended and returned. Are you ready? The high priestess asks. She's old enough to have served 3 kings, to have watched 100 girls take this journey. Most survive. Some even thrive. But all are changed in ways that can't be spoken, only lived. Shamhat nods. What else can she do? The fire in her chest has been growing since the dream. Sometimes she feels it might consume her from inside. Better to let it out. Better to become the flame than be burned by it. The procession winds through Uruk's streets as twilight bleeds across the sky. Drums beat the rhythm of heartbeats. Flutes wail like wind through bones. The people press close, children throwing flower petals, men watching with confused hunger, women ululating that ancient sound that celebrates and mourns simultaneously. The ziggurat rises like a mountain built by human hands, 7 levels reaching toward heaven. At its peak, the marriage chamber waits. 3 walls and a roof. The 4th side open to stars and whatever wants to enter. Shamhat climbs, each step taking her further from the ground, further from the girl who once kissed a boy behind the date palms and thought that was what burning meant. By the time she reaches the top, the city below looks like scattered embers. The blood moon is rising, pregnant and terrible. The chamber is simple, a reed mat, a water jar, a bowl for offerings, and silence so complete it has weight. The high priestess speaks final words in the old tongue, then withdraws. The drums stop, the crowd disperses. Shamhat is alone with the moon and the goddess, and the understanding that she has 3 days to die as herself and be reborn as Inanna's own desire made flesh. The first night is hardest. She sits on the reed mat and waits. For what? The high priestess gave no instructions beyond, "The goddess will teach you, or she'll destroy you." Both are kinds of love. Hours pass. The blood moon climbs higher. Her throat burns with thirst, but she doesn't touch the water jar. Something tells her everything here must be earned. Even basic comfort, even the right to drink. Then it begins. A humming in her bones, a vibration that starts in the earth far below and climbs the ziggurat like a lover climbing into bed. It finds her sitting there, 19 and ancient, newborn and dying, everything and nothing all at once. Inanna doesn't appear. That would be too simple. Instead, she saturates. She permeates. She fills every empty space until there's no room for the girl Shamhat was. Memories crash through. Not her memories, but the goddesses. She experiences Inanna's descent to the underworld, stripped of one garment at each gate until she stands naked before death. She feels the meat hook through divine flesh, the 3 days of rotting, the negotiation for release. She understands with bone-deep knowledge why sex and death are married in the goddess's mythology. Both are transformations. Both are little endings that promise new beginnings. Both require surrender. Her body burns, not with fever, but with something else, something that makes her understand why temple prostitutes are sacred. It's not about the act, though that will come later. It's about becoming a doorway, a threshold, a place where human and divine meet and merge and make something new. She strips off her ceremonial robes. The night air kisses her skin like 1,000 invisible mouths. She stands at the chamber's edge, where floor meets sky, and spreads her arms wide. The blood moon watches. The goddess watches. And deep in her belly, something ancient begins to wake. The second day brings visions. She sees herself in the temple below, wrapped in red robes. Men come to her, merchants and soldiers, priests and kings. They bring offerings, but what they really bring is their hunger, their loneliness, their desperate need to touch something divine. She sees herself opening to them. Not just her body, that's the easy part, but her whole being. Becoming the goddess for an hour, a night, a sacred season. She watches these future encounters with fever-dream detachment, sees how she'll look into each man's eyes and find the broken place that needs healing, how she'll use pleasure as medicine, orgasm as prayer. But she also sees the cost. The nights when the goddess doesn't come. The mornings when she can't remember her own name. The slow erosion of self that comes from being a public vessel for private needs. Is it worth it? The question floats through her fever. Is becoming Inanna's own desire worth losing Shamhat's simple dreams? The goddess laughs. Or maybe it's the wind. Silly girl, you think you had a choice? You were mine from the moment your mother quickened. Every pleasure you felt was practice. Every time you've touched yourself in darkness, you were praying to me. The third night brings transformation. Shamhat is no longer sure she has a body. She might be made of starlight now, or shadow, or the space between breathing in and breathing out. The blood noon sets. The regular moon rises. And with it comes Inanna in her full glory. She is terrible, beautiful, everything Shamhat feared and desired. The goddess wears only divinity, blazing like starlight. Her hair flows like rivers. Her eyes hold the birth and death of civilizations. Daughter, Inanna says. And the word remakes Shamhat at the cellular level. You have fasted. You have burned. You have let yourself be emptied. Now let me fill you. The goddess reaches out and touches Shamhat's chest, right above her heart. Her finger penetrates, not flesh, but something more fundamental. She plants herself like a seed in the red soil of Shamhat's heart. The pain is exquisite, the pleasure unbearable. They're the same sensation, wearing different masks. Shamhat screams, or sings, or speaks in tongues. Her body responds to divine touch with mortal wetness, flooding like the annual inundation. This is initiation. This is marriage. This is the moment when a merchant's daughter dies and Inanna's holy whore is born. Not prostitute. That word carries shame this role doesn't deserve. She is Hierodule, sacred vessel, the goddess's own walking the earth. Now you understand, Inanna whispers. Sex is prayer. Desire is devotion. Every time you open yourself, you open me to them. Through your body, I teach humans that pleasure and reverence are the same word in heaven's language. Dawn breaks over Uruk. Shamhat lies transformed. She looks the same, but everything has changed. She can feel the goddess curled in her heart like a cat. She can feel the prayers of men already rising from the city below. The high priestess climbs the ziggurat and finds her sitting at the edge, naked and unashamed. She sees the transformation, sees the goddess residing behind Shamhat's eyes. And, "Come," she says simply. Your work begins. They dress her in red robes, designed to suggest more than conceal. They paint her face to enhance the divine wildness. They braid her hair with bells that will announce her presence. Every step will be music, every movement invitation. The descent is different from the ascent. 3 days ago, she climbed as Shamhat. Now, she descends as something between, something that bridges the gap between what humans are and what they wish to be. The city gathers to see if she survived. When they see her coming down, transformed and glowing, a cheer goes up. Or maybe it's a prayer. Or maybe it's the sound of collective desire given voice. Her first supplicant already waits in the temple, a merchant desperate enough to seek the goddess's embrace. He's brought offerings, but his real gift is his need, his loneliness, his human hunger for something more. Shamhat looks at him and sees what Inanna sees. Not just a man with an erection and a purse, but a soul seeking connection, a heart hoping for transformation. She opens her arms, opens her robes, opens the space where the goddess lives. "Come," she says. And her voice carries echoes of the divine. "Let me show you how heaven feels." "I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request." She ages slowly. The goddess preserves her vessels. She trains new girls, holds them when they return from the ziggurat terrified and blazing. She teaches them the mysteries, how to open without losing yourself, how to carry the goddess without being consumed. Some nights, when the blood moon rises, she climbs to the roof and remembers. Remembers being 19 and terrified. Remembers the goddess reaching into her chest. Remembers understanding that sacred prostitution isn't about sex. It's about connection. About reminding humans they too are divine. She thinks of her mother, long dead. Of the boy she kissed, who's probably a grandfather now. But mostly, she serves, opens, receives, transforms. She's the reminder that holiness isn't always pure, that sometimes the sacred comes wrapped in skin and sweat and the ancient dance between bodies. Different names, different gods, different traditions, but always the same sacrifice. The personal for the cosmic, the simple love of one for the complex love of all. Before the city wakes, she feeds a flame older than Caesar, older than the Republic, older than Rome's first stone. Listen, do you hear the silence? It's the particular quiet of the hour before dawn, when even the rats in the Subura cease their scurrying, when the whole sprawling madness of Rome holds its breath. In this suspended moment, Claudia tends the sacred fire that must never die. For if it dies, Rome falls. This is what they tell themselves. This is the weight she carries with each breath. The Temple of Vesta is round like the world, like the womb, like eternity itself. No statue stands within. Vesta needs no face. She is the flame itself, the hearth heart of Rome, the eternal principle that transforms raw into cooked, wild into civilized, chaos into empire. And Claudia is her keeper, one of 6 virgin priestesses who stand between Rome and the darkness. She has been Vestal for 12 years now. 18 more to go. 30 years total of tending this flame, of wearing white wool that must never know blood or semen or any fluid of life. 30 years of being Rome's most honored prisoner. The flame dances, and Claudia watches with eyes that have forgotten how to see anything else. Orange, gold, the blue heart where heat becomes almost cold again. She knows all its moods, when it hungers, when it rages, when it dreams of the sky it will never touch. Sometimes she thinks they are the same, she and this fire. Sacred, necessary. She was 8 when they chose her. The perfect age, old enough to understand duty, young enough to be molded. Her father had debts. The Pontifex Maximus offered a solution. Give us your daughter, and your debts disappear. More than disappear, reversed. The family of a Vestal gains status, protection, the kind of respectability that money can't buy. She remembers the day they came, how her mother dressed her in her best tunic, how her father couldn't meet her eyes, how her younger brother clung to her legs, too young to understand why his sister was leaving forever. It's an honor, her mother whispered, fixing a ribbon in Claudia's hair. The greatest honor a girl can have. But her hands shook. Her mother had known love, the weight of children in her arms. She knew what her daughter was losing, knew that honor and happiness rarely share the same bed. The flame flickers, pulling Claudia back. She adds sacred oak from Diana's grove, cut with bronze knives that have never tasted blood. The wood catches immediately. Vesta is always hungry, like Rome itself. Dawn creeps through the smoke hole. Soon the other Vestals will wake. They'll perform the morning rituals together. But for now, Claudia is alone with thoughts she's not supposed to have. She thinks about her sister's children, who call another woman aunt. Vestals cannot acknowledge family ties. The blood bond must be severed, replaced by spiritual sisterhood. But she remembers holding her newest nephew just once when no one was watching. The weight of him, the smell of milk and new life. She thinks about the senator who sent poems until her father reminded him that Vestals who break their vows are buried alive. The poems stopped, but sometimes she still sees him in the forum. He's married now, with sons. But when their eyes meet, she sees the ghost of what might have been. She thinks about spring rain and freedom, about walking wherever she wants, without 6 lictors clearing the way, about eating when hungry, sleeping when tired, laughing when amused. All the simple human actions that become political when you're a symbol rather than a person. The senior Vestal enters as the sun claims the sky. Fabia, ancient at 50, moves with the careful dignity of someone who has forgotten how to hurry. "You've been here all night again," Fabia observes. "I couldn't sleep," Claudia says. Sleep brings dreams, and dreams bring visions of lives unlived. Fabia settles beside her. You're thinking of leaving. Claudia starts. I would never. Peace, child. Every Vestal thinks of it around your years of service. The middle time, when the beginning is too far to remember and the end too far to imagine. Did you think of it? Fabia smiles. And for a moment, Claudia sees the girl she must have been. Every day for my 15th year, I had a plan. Fake my death, flee to Gaul, become someone else entirely. What stopped you? The same thing that stops you. The flame. Fabia reaches toward the fire, lets her hand hover just close enough to feel the heat. We think we tend it, but really it tends us, keeps us pure through purpose, gives us something larger than our small desires. Is it worth it? The question escapes before Claudia can swallow it. Fabia is quiet. I don't know. I have power no other Roman woman possesses. I can own property, make contracts, testify in court. When I walk through the city, men who rule provinces step aside. Is that worth never knowing a lover's touch? Never holding my own child? The scales are broken. We can't measure what we've never experienced. The morning brings news. Spartacus and his slave army have defeated another legion. The Senate wants special sacrifices. The Vestals must process through the city, carrying the sacred flame to each boundary stone. They prepare with extra care. White wool spotless as snow. Hair in the ancient style. The sacred vessels that will carry coals through Rome's wounded heart. The procession forms in the forum. 6 Vestals, 12 lictors, a handful of priests. Such a small group to carry such enormous weight. The people press close, desperate for reassurance. If the Vestals are walking, if the flame still burns, then Rome endures. They begin at the Palatine where Romulus drew his first boundary. Claudia carries her portion of sacred fire, feeling its heat against her chest. The flame flickers with each step, struggling against open air. She cups her hands around the vessel, protective as a mother. Through the Sabora they process, where the poor pack together like fish. Some kneel as they pass, others mutter curses. A woman holds up a baby, seeking blessing. A man spits, careful to miss, but making his contempt clear. Near the Aventine, they encounter evidence of Spartacus's reach. Crucified slaves have been cut down, the crosses lying empty. Graffiti mars the walls. Freedom or death in what might be blood. An old woman breaks through before the lictors can stop her. She falls at Claudia's feet, grasping her stola. My son, she gasps. They took him for the legions. Bless him, Virgin Mother. Keep him safe. Claudia should call away. Contact with the unclean requires purification. But something in the woman's eyes stops her. The same desperation she's seen in the flame when wind threatens. She touches the woman's head. Just for a moment, may Vesta's flame light his way home. The woman sobs gratitude as the lictors pull her away. Claudia's hand burns where she made contact, but not with corruption, with connection. With the sudden understanding that she too is human under the white wool. They complete the circuit as sunset wounds the sky. Back in the temple, the eternal flame receives its traveling portions like a mother welcoming children home. The ritual is complete. Rome is purified. The boundary holds. But Claudia can't forget the old woman's touch. Can't stop seeing the empty crosses, the graffiti, the cracks in Rome's facade. That night, she sits alone with the flame and wonders. What happens when the fire we tend outlives the civilization it serves? What happens to Vestals when Rome falls? She thinks of Spartacus out there, leading his impossible revolution. Does he have someone tending his fires? Or does freedom burn differently than empire, wild and unconstrained? Her hand still tingles where she touched the old woman. Such a small violation of her vows, but it feels enormous, like a crack in a dam, like the first coal falling from the sacred hearth. She adds another log, adjusts the bronze reflectors, speaks the midnight prayers spoken for 600 years. Everything correct, everything proper. But in her heart, that organ she's not supposed to have, something shifts. A tiny flame of her own, separate from Vesta's eternal fire. A spark of want, of wonder, of what if. 18 more years, 6,500 more days of tending this flame. Unless Rome falls first. Unless the slaves break down the doors. Unless the fire finds a way to spread beyond its hearth. She pulls her hand back and examines her palm. No burns. Never any burns. The fire knows its own. But for the first time in 12 years, Claudia wonders what it would feel like to let it mark her. To carry scars instead of purity. To be touched by something that leaves evidence. The night deepens. Rome sleeps fitfully, dreaming of revolution. And in the temple of Vesta, a woman who cannot be a woman tends a flame that demands everything and offers only the cold comfort of purpose. Tomorrow she will wake and do this again, and the next day, and the next, until her term ends and she emerges 48 years old to discover what remains of a life deferred, or until Rome falls and makes the question moot, or until the tiny flame in her heart grows large enough to compete with Vesta's eternal fire. But tonight, she simply tends, simply serves, simply burns without being consumed. It's what Vestals do. It's what Rome requires. Different flames, different names, different chains, but always the same transaction. A life for a light. The flame dances. Claudia watches. And somewhere between the light and shadow, between the warmth given and the cold created, a woman continues her vigil. 18 more years. But who's counting? The Vestal tends her captive flame, while on the banks of the Nile, the last daughter prepares to close 10,000 years of mystery. Before the sun remembers the Nile, before the ibis wake, before the world admits another day, she unlocks the sanctum with hands that no longer tremble. Listen, do you hear it? The sound of eternity ending? It whispers through these halls where her mother walked and her mother's mother, back into the star time when gods had skin and appetites. Tonight, Nefertiti, not the queen, but the last of that common name, prepares for the sacred marriage to Osiris. Tomorrow, Ptolemaic priests will close this temple forever. She is 23 years old and 10,000 years ancient. The 63rd high priestess in an unbroken line since the first dynasty. The last keeper of mysteries that predate the pyramids. The final daughter of Isis in this place where the goddess has been loved longer than anywhere else on earth. The outer courtyard sleeps beneath stars that have different names now. What they called Sahu, the Greeks call Orion. What they knew as the imperishable stars, the conquerors map with foreign mathematics. Even the heavens are being colonized. Nefertiti moves barefoot across stones worn smooth by 20 centuries of priestesses. She doesn't need the oil lamp she carries. Her feet know every stone. But the goddess likes to see her servants' faces when they come calling, especially on this last morning. She was born into the dying days, learned her letters as Alexander's armies swept through like bronze locusts, took her first vows as the Ptolemies carved up the two lands like a feast fowl. And now, in what should be her flowering years, she tends a garden already killed by frost. The other priestesses left one by one, married Greek merchants, converted to easier gods, forgot the true names of things. But Nefertiti stayed. Someone had to. Someone had to remember that Isis has 10,000 names, each one a key to a different door in the human heart. She reaches the inner gate, speaks the password that opens stone, steps into darkness thick as honey. The sanctuary breathes with its own life. By lamplight, she begins the morning ritual. First, the awakening. Gentle words to coax the goddess from her night travels. Lady of words of power, mistress of the house of life, she who knows all secrets, awaken. The statue stands twice her height, carved from black granite when the pyramids were young. Gold leaf clings to divine skin. Crystal eyes seem to watch, to know, to grieve for what's coming. Nefertiti heats milk in a copper bowl, adds honey from the temple's dying hives. She bathes the statue with infinite care, each limb separately, each finger. The ritual must be perfect. Not because the goddess demands it, but because perfection is all Nefertiti has left to give. The milk runs down obsidian skin. The honey catches lamplight like tears. And Nefertiti sings the old songs in the temple language that predates hieroglyphs. Her mother breathed these sounds into her mouth like baby birds. No one else speaks it now. When she dies, the language dies with her. As she sings, she dresses the goddess. Fresh linen woven by her own hands. The collar of gold and carnelian, the sistrum that rattles like rain, the ankh that promises life eternal, though eternity itself seems to be dying. The morning ritual should take an hour. Nefertiti stretches it to 2. Who will hurry the last dance? When it's done, she sits at the goddess's feet. This isn't ritual. This is just her, being 23 and tired and alone in a way that has nothing to do with solitude. Mother, she whispers, what do I do when they come? The goddess doesn't answer. Gods rarely do when it matters most. But morning light creeps through the high window, painting everything gold. One last golden morning. The sacred marriage preparations begin at noon. The sun stands witness. The 2 remaining priestesses, girls who will flee at dawn, help Nefertiti disrobe. Their hands shake. They know what tomorrow brings. Gently, Nefertiti tells them, as if gentleness could save anything. The bathwater comes from the sacred pool, blessed with 7 oils, 7 resins, 7 prayers in 7 languages. Nefertiti sinks into it and feels history soak into her bones. This body, young, strong, never touched by man, will tonight become vessel for the goddess. Through sacred marriage to Osiris's immortal essence, she will bridge human and divine. No mortal husband, no children. Instead, she'll birth mystery itself. If the world still believed, if the right still held power, if the saddest words in any language, she floats and remembers her mother's steady hands painting ritual marks. "You are the 63rd in our line," she said. "The goddess chose your grandmother in a dream. She chose me through the sacred lots. But you she chose through necessity, because there is no one else." The fever that took her mother 3 years ago, leaving Nefertiti High Priestess at 20. Too young, but the only one who remembered all the words. They paint her skin until she gleams like polished stone. Henna darkens her nipples. Gold becomes her nails. Coal so black, it opens windows into the void. This is armoring, making her body strange enough for a goddess to wear. The wedding dress weighs like destiny. Gold thread, sapphire beads. The marriage collar no living smith could replicate. It takes all 3 to lift it over her head. The weight settles on her shoulders like all the previous priestesses leaning close to whisper, "You are the last. Make it count." Sunset comes like a wound. The temple fills with shadows and silence. No witnesses tonight. In the old days, the marriage of Isis would have brought crowds. Kings would have sent offerings. But now there's only Nefertiti and 2 frightened girls, and gods who may not be watching anymore. She sends the girls away. This must be done alone. The inner sanctum transforms in twilight. Shadows move wrong. The air thickens with something that isn't quite incense, isn't quite breath, isn't quite real. Nefertiti lights the marriage torches, speaks the words that summon the bridegroom. Osiris, the dead king, the eternal husband, Lord of silence, he who sleeps beneath the black land, the dismembered who becomes whole. I call you to your wedding bed. The flames flicker without wind. The temperature drops. Something vast and patient turns its attention her way. He comes in pieces, as he always does, as he must. First, the scent of river mud and eternity, then pressure in the air. The marriage bed groans as if bearing invisible weight. She sees him with other eyes now. The marriage oils have lifted veils. She watches him reassemble. A hand here, a thigh there. The proud jaw that set shattered. The heart that 42 judges weighed and found worthy. Piece by piece, love's greatest jigsaw puzzle solving itself. He is beautiful, terrible. Nothing like the paintings. His skin shifts between colors with no names. His eyes hold the patience of eternity and the hunger of the grave. Wife, he says, the word coming from everywhere and nowhere. My sister, my beloved, my last priestess. Last. Even the gods know. Even eternity acknowledges the ending. The marriage rite unfolds like a flower made of time. She offers bread he cannot eat, wine he cannot drink, her body he cannot touch, not as mortals understand touching. Instead, he enters differently, through breath, through dreams, through the spaces between heartbeats. This is the mystery. Sacred marriage isn't about flesh. It's about opening doors in yourself that should stay closed. Letting divinity walk through your halls, rearrange your furniture. Claim squatters' rights in your holiest places. She becomes the goddess. Not metaphorically. She becomes. Isis rises in her like floodwater. Memories crash over. nursing Horus in papyrus swamps, outwitting Set through cunning, reassembling Osiris with tears and spells, and the kind of love that refuses death's dominion. 10,000 years of godhood pour into her 23-year-old frame. Too much, too fast, too real, but she holds. The last priestess knows how to be a worthy vessel. Through her throat, Isis speaks to her husband. Through her eyes, goddess beholds God. Through her heart, the divine marriage consummates itself. They dance the ritual steps, formal as hieroglyphs. His ghostly hand feels like holding Winker. His breath smells of lotus and tomb dust. When he whispers the secret names, she understands why priestesses can't marry mortals. After the touch of gods, human love feels like settling for shadows. Hours pass, or minutes, or centuries. They perform the mysteries that regenerate the cosmos. Through their union, the Nile will rise again. The sun will remember its path. This is what the marriage means. Not personal fulfillment, but cosmic necessity. But even as they dance, she feels it ending. Tomorrow's boots echo in the corridors. Tomorrow's simplified gods cast their shadows. My love, Osiris whispers, my last bride, my final mystery. The words are benediction and eulogy combined. Dawn comes unwelcome. The marriage torches die. Osiris fades with the morning stars. Nefertiti sits alone on the marriage bed, still wearing the goddess like an ill-fitting robe. Through the high window, she hears them, soldiers speaking Greek. The future arriving in hobnailed boots. She could fight. The goddess's power still flows in her veins. She could speak words that would turn their swords to snakes. But what's the point? You can't curse an entire age. You can't By the time they break down the door, she's nobody special. Just a young woman in temple robes. Outdated, irrelevant, forgettable. The temple of Isis is closed by order of Ptolemy, they announce, as if she couldn't feel it in her bones. She walks out with dignity intact, leaves 10,000 years of tradition behind, steps into a world that has no place for her. But in her chest, where her heart should be, Osiris left something. A seed, a promise. The gods don't die, it whispers. They just learn new names. And somewhere, somewhen, another girl will open her emptiness to heaven. The marriage will continue. The mystery will endure. Just differently. She walks into Alexandria's morning chaos, disappears into history. The last daughter of an immortal line. But at night, when she dreams, she still dances with the dead. Still speaks the language only gods remember. Still carries the flame, even if there's no war left to tend it. The last daughter walks into exile, while in southern India, another girl forgets her name to remember every movement of the divine dance. When Jasmine dreams in temple courtyards, when stone gods wear fresh flowers, she dances. Listen, do you hear the ankle bells? They speak a language older than words, each chime a syllable in the conversation between earth and heaven. In the hour before dawn, she practices alone in the mandapam. No audience but the stone Shiva, who watches with eyes that have seen 1,000 dancers come and go. She had another name once. Before the drought that killed the crops and cracked the earth like broken promises, before her parents stood at the temple steps with empty hands and emptier bellies, before the priests looked at her, 7 years old, all bones and hunger and huge dark eyes, and saw divinity waiting to be cultivated. She has the marks, the old Devadasi said, examining her feet, her hands, the curve of her neck. Long fingers for mudras, high arches for stamping. And see how she moves? Like water, like wind. The god has already claimed her. Her parents wept with relief. One less mouth to feed, one child saved from starvation, even if salvation meant something else entirely. They performed the dedication ceremony before the rains came, marrying her to the temple's deity in a wedding more binding than any mortal union. Now she is Sundaravali, beautiful vine, a name that belongs to the temple, not to her. The girl she was, the one who helped her mother grind millet and sang to the goats. That girl dissolved like salt in sacred water. What remains is function, divine dancer, heavenly musician, the god's own wife who can never be widow. Takadimi, takadimi, the rhythm builds from her feet up through her spine. Each stamp sends tremors through the temple, through the earth, through the invisible threads that connect all moving things. Her hands shape mudras, Katakamuka for the parrot, Alapadma for the lotus blooming, Pataka for the flag of surrender to divine will. Her eyes follow her hands, drawing sacred diagrams in empty air. The practice is prayer, even when her muscles scream. Even when her feet bleed from hours on stone, even when she can't remember why she moves, only that she must. The dance is larger than her small pains, older than her young body, more permanent than the life she might have lived. Dawn paints the temple walls saffron. Soon the devotees will arrive, the wealthy merchants commissioning performances, hoping divine favor follows divine entertainment. The barren women pressing coins into her hands, believing the god's wife can intercede. The young men who watch with hunger, poorly disguised as devotion. But first, the ritual bath in the temple tank. She descends into water that holds centuries of reflected prayers. Under the surface, she opens her eyes and sees the world inverted. Sky below, earth above, everything reversed like her life. The other Devadasis prepare in the dressing chamber. They range from 9 to 90, all wed to the same stone husband, sharing the strange sisterhood of women who belong to God. The youngest still cry for their mothers at night. The oldest have become their dance. No separation between self and service. Sundaravalli, your hair, chides Kamakshi, already reaching for coconut oil. You'll perform the Varnam for the merchant family today. They've donated 3 cows and gold. The god should dance especially well. They oil her hair until it gleams like black water. Braid it with jasmine. Paint her feet and palms with ota, the red dye marking where human ends and sacred begins. Line her eyes with kajal, so dark it opens windows into void. The costume weighs like destiny. Silk that catches light and throws it back transformed. Gold jewelry that turns her into a moving temple. The adyanam around her waist, heavy with symbolic decorations. Sun and moon on her ears, marking her as one who dances between day and night. But it's the makeup that completes transformation. White paste creates a canvas of her face. Red dots map the chakras. The tilaka opens her third eye. When they finish, the mirror shows a stranger, or perhaps her truest self, the one that exists only in sacred time. The merchants wait in the performance mandapam. 3 generations seeking blessing through beauty. The grandmother watches with knowing eyes. She was probably almost offered once. Saved by a son born at the last moment. The young wives clutch their pregnant bellies, grateful for children that save them from dedication. The men arrange themselves by status, trying not to stare too openly. The musicians take position. Mridangam and veena, flute and cymbals. The Natuvanar raises his small cymbals. The moment stretches like held breath. Then the bowl begins. Ta kadimi, ta kita, ta kajanu. Ancient syllables that bypass meaning and speak directly to the body. Sundaravali feels them enter through her feet, rise through her spine, explode into readiness. She enters with eyes downcast, hands in Anjali Mudra. The first movement is always the flowering of consciousness, divine energy awakening from its sleep at the spine's base. She's not Sundaravali now. She's Parvati dancing for Shiva. She is Radha calling Krishna. She is every woman who ever moved her body in praise. The Varnam tells its eternal story. Love, longing, the soul's search for divine union, played out through romantic metaphor. Her eyes speak of waiting for the beloved who never comes. Her hands describe his beauty. Lotus eyes, rain cloud skin, the smile that destroys and creates worlds. Her feet beat out the urgency of separation. But underneath, something else happens. The dance cracks open space between human and divine. The merchants lean forward, forgetting their negotiations. The pregnant women touch their bellies, feeling babies respond to rhythms older than language. Even children stop fidgeting, caught in the spell. This is why Devadasis are necessary. Not for entertainment, though they entertain. Not for beauty, though they embody it. But for this, creating doorways between worlds, reminding that the body is not separate from spirit, but its most eloquent expression. Sundaravali loses herself in the dance. This is the blessing and curse, dissolution of self into service. She doesn't think about steps anymore. Her body knows them, like lungs know breathing. Instead, she becomes a conduit for something that needs no name because it predates naming. The merchant's grandmother weeps silently. She remembers being 7, standing at these temple steps, remembers the moment her parents turned away, and the temple became her world. But her tears aren't bitter. She weeps for beauty, for the terrible price of perfection, for girls who become God's garden so others can glimpse paradise. The performance builds to climax, pure dance where narrative falls away and only rhythm remains. Sundaravali's feet strike the floor in mathematical precision. 3 beats, 5, 7, 9, patterns that mirror the universe's calculations. Sweat runs down her back. Her breath comes hard. She has become the dance. There is no Sundaravali, only movement and the God moving through her. When it ends, the silence is profound, like the moment after lightning before thunder. Then the merchants remember themselves, shower the space with coins and flowers. The grandmother presses a gold bangle into Sundaravali's hands, whispers something that might be gratitude or apology or recognition. But Sundaravali barely hears. She's still half dissolved, vibrating with possession's aftermath. It takes hours to return after dancing. Hours to remember. She has a body needing food, water, rest. The god uses her hard, leaves her emptied and exalted equally. Between performances, she teaches the younger girls. Little Mira, barely 8, still cries for her mother at night. Sundaravali holds her, remembering her own tears, long dried. It hurts, Mira whimpers, as her legs tremble in Aramandi, the half-sitting position that builds strength. Yes, Sundaravali agrees. Everything hurts at first, but pain is just sensation, and sensation is just God touching you. Let him shape you into something beautiful. She hears her teachers in her own voice, realizes she's become what she once feared, the woman who inducts others into this beautiful prison. But what choice is there? The girls are already dedicated. Better to give them excellence in their chains. Evening brings the temple's public performance. The courtyard fills with all castes, all classes. Democracy of devotion. Everyone equal before the dancing god. Sundaravali performs with senior Devadasis, bodies creating visual symphonies. But tonight something shifts. In the crowd, she catches sight of a man. Not young, not old, ordinary except for how he watches. Not with hunger or devotion, but simple appreciation. He sees her. Not the costume, not the god moving through her, but her. The woman who forgot her own name, but remembers every gesture. Their eyes meet for a heartbeat. In that moment, she remembers she exists. That under the alta and silk and divine possession, there's a person who might have preferences, desires, a favorite color. The realization terrifies her. She stumbles, catches herself, continues. But damage is done. She has remembered she's human. That night she can't sleep. The jasmine oppresses with sweetness. Her jewelry feels like chains. She rises, walks to the temple tank, sits watching the moon's reflection shatter and reform on water. The man appears like he was always meant to. Says nothing, just sits at respectful distance. They don't speak. What would be the point? She can never be his. He can never be more than a devotee. But somehow, his silent presence acknowledges her in ways decades of worship haven't. I had a name once, she whispers to water, moon, and witness. Before I became beautiful vine. Before I became God's wife. I had a name, and it meant something simple. About morning, or birds, or the sound water makes. I can't remember. He doesn't respond, doesn't move closer, just witnesses. And somehow that's enough. To be seen not as symbol, but as woman. To be acknowledged as loss, not just art. When dawn comes, he's gone. She never sees him again. Perhaps he was real. Perhaps she dreamed him. It doesn't matter. What matters is that for one night, she remembered she exists beyond function. She returns to morning practice. Takadimi, takadimi. The rhythm begins again. Her feet find position. Her hands shape eternal mudras. But something has changed. A crack in the perfect vessel. A flaw in the divine instrument. She dances anyway. Through doubt, through remembering, through grief of being everyone's and no one's. Because this is what Devadasis do. They take experiences too large for ordinary life and transform them into beauty others can witness safely. Years pass. Her body ages but serves. Young girls become old women in God's service. And somewhere in it all, a woman who forgot her name moves through ancient forms, carrying memories of all who danced before and seeds of all who'll dance after. She is Sundaravali. She is no one. She is every woman who chose art over life, service over self, eternal over personal. Different gods, different dances, different chains made of gold and duty and terrible beauty. But always the same sacrifice. The jasmine wilts. Fresh flowers replace them. The dance continues. And between human and divine, between flesh and spirit, between the woman she was and symbol she became, something moves that has no name but knows every step. This is the Devadasi's gift and curse, to be the bridge others cross to reach God while never crossing herself. To be beauty pointing beyond itself while trapped within. To forget her name while remembering every name of God. The ankle bells speak, the mudras map the universe, and in the temple's heart, a woman dances herself into immortality, one forgotten name at a time. The dancer spins her eternal prayer, while in the Egyptian desert, an old woman prepares for the ultimate dance with nothingness. The desert has 1,000 names for silence. Amma Syncletica knows them all. Listen, do you hear the nothing? It's not absence, but presence. The weight of air when it hasn't moved for days. The sound of sand settling grain by grain. The whisper of a heart learning to beat slower, slower, until it almost forgets its purpose. She came here as Eupraxia, daughter of Constantinople merchants. That was 50 years and several lifetimes ago. The desert ate that girl, bones and beauty alike. What remains calls itself Syncletica, she who gathers. Though what she gathers is absence itself. Her cell is a cave carved by wind and patience. 4 walls of stone, a palm mat, a water jar that she fills less and less often. No door. She is her own door, her own lock, her own key. The other desert mothers live in cells nearby, close enough to share water in emergency, far enough to preserve the solitude that brought them here. They weave baskets to trade for bread, copy scriptures to keep their minds from dissolving entirely, fight the demons that take shape from heat shimmer and hunger. But Syncletica goes deeper, always deeper. She seeks the silence beneath silence, the void beneath the void, the nothing that contains everything. Tonight begins her great fast. 40 days without food. The last 7 without water. The younger sisters begged her to reconsider. She is 70 now, her body already more spirit than flesh. Skin like parchment, stretched over bird bones. Eyes that have looked at God so long, they've forgotten how to see anything else. "You'll die," young Theodora warned. She who's been in the desert only 5 years and still remembers the taste of figs. "Yes," Syncletica agreed. "That's the point." Not death as ending, but as doorway. She's been practicing for this her whole life. Every man she didn't marry, every child she didn't bear, every comfort she refused. All of it preparation for this final letting go. The ultimate poverty. Giving up even the breath that claims to own itself. She remembers her arrival 50 years ago. 20 years old, fleeing a marriage to a senator's son. Her parents had spent months on negotiations. The dowry, the contracts, the careful breeding of 2 wealthy bloodlines. The wedding dress was already made, silk heavy with gold thread, when she cut her hair with kitchen shears and walked out of Constantinople, wearing her brother's clothes. The journey to Egypt nearly killed her. Soft city girl learning the desert's first lesson. It doesn't care about your reasons. It strips you down to essentials: water, shade, the will to take one more step. By the time she found the settlements of the desert fathers and mothers, she was already half transformed. The desert had begun its work of subtraction. "Why do you come?" old Ama Sarah asked her. This woman who'd been in the desert 40 years, who looked like leather stretched over light. "To find God," Eupraxia answered. "Child," Sarah laughed, a sound like wind through dry grass. "God isn't lost. You are. The desert helps you stop being found." 50 years of learning what that meant. 50 years of subtraction. First the obvious things: soap dresses, servants, the casual cruelty of wealth. Then the subtle things: the need to be understood, the desire to be special, the secret pride in her own holiness. Layer after layer peeled away, like onion skin, and at the center, nothing. Beautiful, terrible nothing. She discovered the stages of hunger. First the body screams, demanding its old pleasures. Then it negotiates, willing to settle for bread and water. Then it rages, convinced you're killing it. Then, finally, it surrenders, becomes transparent, lets the light through. She learned the geography of solitude, the early years when loneliness has teeth, when you'd sell your soul for one conversation about nothing important. The middle years, when silence becomes companion, when you realize you've forgotten the sound of your own voice. The later years, when even the memory of loneliness fades, when solitude isn't an absence, but a presence, vast and patient as the desert itself. And through it all, the presence she came seeking. God in the desert isn't the God of cities dressed in gold and doctrine. Desert God is raw, stranger, more terrible. Like encountering a wild animal instead of a painting of one. Sometimes she felt him as weight, pressing down until she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only endure. Sometimes as absence so complete it had its own gravity. Sometimes as fire that burned without consuming, leaving her charred but somehow more alive. The other mothers thought her extreme, even by desert standards. While they took their single meal at sunset, she ate every third day. While they allowed themselves the comfort of shared prayer once a week, she went months without speaking. While they fought their demons, she invited hers in, sat with them, learned their names. "You go too far," Amma Theodora worried. "Even the desert fathers say we must be moderate in our asceticism." But Synclitica had passed beyond moderation decades ago. She wasn't trying to be holy anymore. Holiness was just another possession to be stripped away. She was trying to become nothing, pure receptivity, a hole in the universe where God could pour himself without obstruction. Now, at 70, she prepares for the final stripping. Her body is already gossamer, held together by will more than flesh. Her hair, once black as Constantinople nights, has gone white as salt. Her hands are claws that barely remember how to hold things. Perfect. The less of her there is, the more room for what matters. She sits at her cave mouth as darkness falls. The desert at night is different country. Cold where it was hot, alive where it seemed dead. Creatures emerge from hiding. Stars crowd the sky like spilled salt. The silence deepens until it hums. This is her wedding night. Not to Christ. That metaphor belongs to gentler mystics. This is marriage to the void itself, to the darkness between stars, to the pause between heartbeats, where everything waits to be born or die. She begins by giving away her few possessions, the palm mat to young Macrina, who still feels the stones through her thin flesh, the water jar to Maria, whose kidney stones make every drop precious, her single rough tunic to whoever needs it. She keeps only her body, and soon that too will be gift. The first days of the fast are familiar territory. She's done this before many times. The body protests, then negotiates, then submits. But this time, she pushes past the submission into new country. Day 4, 5, 6 without food. The hunger transforms from pain into strange euphoria. Her vision sharpens even as her body weakens. She can see the heat leaving her skin in visible waves, can hear the sand settling grain by grain, can feel her heartbeat slowing, spacing itself out like a drummer forgetting the rhythm. The other mothers watch from distance, torn between respect and horror. They've all fasted, all pushed their bodies to the edge. But this is different. This isn't asceticism for purification. This is deliberate self-erasure. And yet, there's something beautiful in it. Like watching a master artist's final painting. Every unnecessary line removed, only essence remaining. Day 10. The hunger has passed beyond sensation into pure space. She feels hollow as a reed, light as ash. When the wind blows through her cave, she hears it whistling through her bones. Prayer becomes impossible. What words could fill this vastness? Instead, she simply is. Simply opens, simply allows whatever wants to move through her to move. Visions come, but gently, not the violent spiritual warfare of younger years. She sees her parents, long dead, and forgives them for loving her wrong. Sees the senator's son she never married, father of 6 now, and blesses the life she didn't live. Sees all the women who came to the desert after her, following the path she helped carve, and knows the strange motherhood of spiritual lineage. Day 20. Walking becomes impossible. She crawls to the cave mouth to watch sunrise. Sunset. The distinction between her body and the desert floor blurs. Sand in her mouth tastes like home. Sun on her skin feels like being seen. She understands now why Moses took off his shoes, not from reverence, but from recognition. The ground is holy because we are ground. Dust to dust, but also dust during. Always dust. Beautifully, terribly dust. The younger mothers leave water outside her cave. She doesn't touch it. Not from pride. Pride burned away years ago. But from clarity. She knows what she's doing, has always known. Every choice she made led here. To this cave, this fast, this marriage to nothing that is everything. Day 30. Consciousness flickers like candle flame in wind. Sometimes she's Eupraxia, silk-wrapped daughter of privilege. Sometimes Syncletica, desert crone who speaks in silence. Sometimes no one at all, just awareness without identity, presence without person. This is what she came for. This is the gift hidden in all that subtraction. She remembers teaching young Theodora about the stages of prayer. First, words, then wordless longing, then the imageless presence, then what? What comes after presence? Only the desert knows, and the desert keeps its secrets until you become desert yourself. Day 35. Her body is shutting down system by system. Kidneys first, the concentrated urine of deep dehydration. Then extremities, fingers and toes numb as wood. But her awareness expands even as her body contracts. She feels the other mothers praying for her, feels the scorpions hunting in the night, feels the stars burning their ancient light, feels the vast web of connection that includes and transcends all of it. Day 38. No more water for 3 days now. Her lips crack like drought-struck earth. Her tongue swells. Swallowing becomes impossible. But somehow, peace increases with the suffering. Or maybe suffering is the wrong word. Sensation, experience, the final teaching of the body before it releases its claim. A younger mother. She can't tell which one anymore. Her eyes barely function. Kneels at the cave mouth. Amma, please, one sip. God doesn't require this. Syncletica tries to speak. Can't. Manages to shape her cracked lips into something like a smile. God doesn't require anything. That's the secret. God doesn't require. God just is. And in fasting unto death, she's not giving God anything. She's just removing the last obstacle between is and is. Day 40. The sunrise comes like mercy or judgment. Hard to tell the difference anymore. Everything is fire. The sky, the sand, her blood, her bones. She is being refined like gold, burned clean of the last traces of self. She knows without knowing that this is the last dawn she'll see with bodily eyes. And it's perfect. 70 years of life, 50 in the desert, all narrowing to this point of perfect presence. She has become what she sought, nothing. And in becoming nothing, somehow, everything. The younger mothers find her at sunset, sitting at her cave mouth, facing east. Eyes open but seeing something beyond sky. Lips curved in the slightest smile. Hands open on her lap like empty cups. Dead, but the word seems wrong. Transformed, translated, graduated. They bury her in the sand she loved. No marker, she would have wanted none. But the desert remembers. In the hot wind that strips pretense, in the silence that teaches subtraction, in every woman who comes after. Seeking God by seeking nothing, finding everything by losing all. Different names, different centuries, different expressions of the same immortal hunger, but always the same path, the via negativa, the way of negation, the road that leads through loss to what can't be lost. Amma Syncletica, she who gathered absence until absence gathered her. She who showed that some bridges to God are built by burning all bridges. She who proved that the deepest love looks like letting go. The desert keeps her secrets. But sometimes in the hour before dawn, when silence has weight and darkness has texture, you can hear them whispered. Less is more. Loss is gain. Death is door. And in dying to everything, everything lives. The desert mother completes her final dance with emptiness, while in ancient Persia, another woman, in darkness before dawn, where flame breathes like the lungs of God, Golnar tends the holy fire. Listen, do you hear it breathing? The sacred flame speaks in the old tongue, in the crack of resin pockets exploding, in the whisper of wood becoming ash, in the almost musical sigh of heat meeting air. She speaks back to it in the language that existed before Babylon rose, before the first magi learned to read tomorrow in smoke patterns. But carefully, always carefully, through the padan that covers her mouth. Even her exhalations are too mortal for this fire. Even her breath might pollute the purity of Ahura Mazda's own exhalation made visible. For 9 years, since she was 14, she has been wed to this flame that must burn for 1,000 years. Some say it has already burned for 300, kindled by Zoroaster himself when he first heard the truth of divine duality. Light and dark, truth and lie, the eternal battle playing out in every moment. Others claim it's even older, the last ember carried from the cosmic fire that existed before creation split into opposing forces. Golnar doesn't care about its history. She knows its present. Every mood, every hunger, every dream of the sky it will never touch. She knows when it needs sandalwood versus cedar, when it craves the sweetness of frankincense or the grounding of myrrh. She reads its colors like other women read their children's faces. The orange of contentment, the blue of deep burning, the white of divine presence, the dangerous yellow that means it's thinking of escape. They chose her for her purity, not just of body, virgin flesh is common enough, but purity of thought, of word, of deed. The triple path that Zoroaster taught, humata, hukta, farshta. Good thoughts, good words, good deeds. She demonstrated all three from childhood, or so the priests declared when they tested her. But thoughts are unruly children. They wander where they shouldn't, especially in the dupe hours of night watch, when the world sleeps and only she and the flame remain awake. She thinks of her sister's wedding last spring, the yellow silk dress that made her skin glow like honey, the way her husband looked at her, desire and tenderness mixed like wine and water. The morning after, when her sister returned to visit, moving differently, knowing something Golnar will never know. She thinks of the caravan guard who smiled at her before she took her vows. Dark eyes and calloused hands, and a voice that made her stomach flutter like captive birds. He probably doesn't even remember the girl who served him water at her father's inn. But she remembers the way his throat moved when he drank, the drop of water that escaped and ran down his neck like an invitation. She thinks of the other life she might have lived. Children pulling at her skirts, a husband coming home dusty from the fields. The simple rhythm of ordinary days, cooking, cleaning, loving, fighting, making up, making love, making life. The weight of a baby at her breast, the pride of a son learning his letters, the bitter sweetness of a daughter leaving for her own marriage. But then the flame flickers, demanding attention, and she remembers why she's here. Someone must tend the eternal. Someone must keep the light burning in the darkness. Someone must stand between the world and the chaos that waits to swallow it. The fire temple is small, humble compared to the great structures at the capital. Just 4 walls of mud brick, a domed roof with a smoke hole, and the altar where the sacred flame burns in its bronze bowl. But size doesn't matter. What matters is continuity. This flame is one of many across the empire. A network of lights holding back the darkness that Angra sends creeping across the world each night. She adjusts the placement of the logs. The fire must never be fed directly. That would be too much like the crude fires of ordinary life. Instead, she places the wood beside the flame, letting it choose when and how to reach out and claim its food. Sometimes it's patient, letting the logs sit for hours before extending a tentative tongue of heat. Sometimes it pounces immediately, hungry as a winter wolf. Tonight, it's restless. She's seen this mood before. Usually when storms approach, or wars begin, or the cosmic balance shifts. The flame dances higher than usual, throwing wild shadows on the walls. Its color shifts from orange to gold to something almost green. It whispers secrets in the language of combustion, but she can't quite understand. The other fire-keeper arrives as dawn approaches. Darius is 40, married with children who will never follow his path. The priesthood requires purity from birth, and his sons were conceived in the normal messiness of marriage. He nods to her, begins the ritual ablutions. They don't speak. Speech near the fire requires special prayers, special purification. Easier to remain silent. But she sees the question in his eyes, feels the restlessness too, wonders what the flame knows that they don't. They perform the morning ceremony together, the offering of sandalwood, cut with bronze knives and blessed with sacred words, the libation of purified water, poured in a circle around the altar, but never touching the flame itself. The prayers in Avestan, the sacred language that shapes reality through sound. Atash Niayishin, they chant, the litany to fire. O fire, son of Ahura Mazda, worthy of sacrifice, worthy of prayer, may you be present in this house. May you be ever burning in this house. May you blaze in this house. May you increase in this house, even for 1,000 years. 1,000 years. The number makes Golnar dizzy sometimes. She will tend this flame for perhaps 60 years if she lives long. Then another will take her place, and another, and another. A chain of women and men, stretching into a future none of them will see. All for this, to keep one small fire burning in one small temple in one corner of the empire. Is it worth it? The question comes unbidden, dangerous as sparks near straw. The morning passes in routine tasks, cleaning the temple floor, but carefully so no dust rises near the flame. Preparing the noon offering, copying sacred texts in the scriptorium, though her education is limited and she struggles with the older passages. But underneath the routine, unease grows. The flame's restlessness increases. It reaches out toward the walls as if trying to escape. Its color shifts through spectrums that shouldn't exist in simple combustion. And then, just past noon, she understands. Smoke on the horizon. Black, oily smoke that speaks of violence, not sacrifice. The Greeks are coming. Alexander's armies, fresh from conquering half the world, bringing their strange gods and stranger ideas about divinity. The priests spoke of this possibility, but distantly, the way you speak of earthquakes or floods, terrible but theoretical. Now theory becomes reality, marching toward them in bronze and dust. Darius sees it too. His face bows pale above his white beard. They both know what this means. Conquerors don't respect foreign temples, don't understand the delicate network of flames that keep the world in balance. To them, a fire is just a fire. Gold is just gold, and priests are just obstacles to overcome. "We should hide the sacred vessels," Darius says, forgetting the prohibition on casual speech. But Golnar shakes her head. Where would they hide them? And more importantly, who would tend the flame if they're busy protecting treasures? The afternoon stretches like a held breath. Other priests arrive, bringing news. The Greek advance guard has been spotted. The main army follows. The satrap has fled. The city prepares for siege or surrender, depending on Alexander's mood. "We should extinguish the flame," young Baharam suggests. "Carry the embers to safety. Rekindle it when the danger passes." The older priests look at him with horror. Extinguish the eternal flame? It would be like murdering God. The flame has burned continuously for centuries. To let it die, even temporarily, would break the chain of light that holds back darkness. "We stay," the head priest declares. "We tend. We trust in Ahura Mazda." But his voice shakes. Faith and fear can coexist, Golnar has learned. Trust and terror are not opposites, but dance partners. Night falls. The smoke on the horizon glows orange now. The Greeks are burning the outer settlements. The other priests pray in the main chamber, but Golnar returns to her post. If this is the flame's last night, someone should witness it. Someone should be present for the ending of eternity. She removes her podden, the mouth covering. What does purity matter if the world is ending? She speaks directly to the flame for the first time in 9 years. "I'm sorry," she says. "We failed you, failed to keep you safe, failed to maintain the balance. The darkness is coming, and we're too few, too weak, too human to stop it." The flame dances higher, and for a moment she swears it shapes itself into a form, almost human, almost divine, almost recognizable. The figure of a woman made of fire, reaching out with arms of light. "Sister," the flame seems to whisper, "we are the same, you and I, kept pure, kept separate, kept burning for others, while never allowed to spread wild and free. Do you think I don't dream of forests? Of consuming everything in glorious destruction? Of being more than this careful, contained, eternal prisoner?" Golnar's breath catches. 9 years of one-sided conversation, and now the flame speaks back. Or perhaps she's finally listening with the right ears. "But we choose the containing," she whispers back. "Choose the tending. Choose to burn steady rather than bright." "Do we choose?" the flame asks. "Or are we chosen? Did you want this life, little keeper? Or did they see your purity and claim it before you knew you had something to lose? The truth burns hotter than any fire." She was 5 when the priests first noticed her, 7 when they began the training, 14 when they bound her to this flame. Always someone else's choice, always the greater good over personal desire. But now, with Greek fire approaching, she finally understands something. The flame is right. They are the same. Both prisoners, both pure, both necessary. But necessity doesn't mean powerless. She stands, decision crystallizing like resin in heat. If the flame must die tonight, it won't die alone, won't die abandoned. She'll stay with it, speaking the prayers, maintaining the rituals until the very end. And if the Greeks try to extinguish it, she looks at the bronze knife used for cutting sacred wood, looks at the oil that feeds the flame when wood isn't enough, looks at her own hands, young and strong and capable of more than just tending. The night deepens. The war sounds grow closer, but in the fire temple, Gulnar speaks to the flame as equals for the first time, tells it about her sister's wedding, about the caravan guard, about the children she'll never have. And the flame responds with its own stories, the prayers it's heard, the secrets whispered in its presence, the other keepers it's known and consumed slowly over centuries. Dawn comes red as blood. The Greeks are at the city gates. But still Gulnar tends. Still she feeds the flame. Still she maintains the 1,000-year vigil, even if it ends today. When the soldiers finally burst through the temple doors, they find something unexpected. Not cowering priests or hidden mold. Just a young woman in white, sitting beside a fire, speaking to it like an old friend. The paten lies discarded. Her face is uncovered, unashamed. "Is this your god?" the captain asks in broken Persian. Gulnar considers the question. Is the flame a god? Or symbol? Or prisoner like herself? "It's fire," she says simply. "Sacred fire. It harms no one, wishes ill on no one, simply burns because someone must tend the light." The captain looks at her, at the flame, at the simple temple that holds no treasures worth looting. Something in her calm affects him. Or perhaps it's the fire itself, dancing its eternal dance, neither aggressive nor afraid. "Let it burn," he tells his men. Alexander conquers kingdoms, not cooking fires. They leave, taking nothing but confusion. Why would someone dedicate their life to watching fire? Why would a woman choose flame over family? The Greeks worship gods who look human, act human, love and rage and breed like humans. This careful tending of elemental force disturbs them more than armies would. Gulnar stays at her post through the occupation, through the change of government, through the arrival of Greek settlers who stare at her with the same confusion as their soldiers. The flame burns on, and she tends it, but something fundamental has changed. She no longer wears the padan except during formal ceremonies. She speaks to the flame as companion, not master. And sometimes, late at night, she tells it stories of the life she didn't live, and it tells her stories of the forests it didn't burn. And together, they create a third story, the one where choice and necessity dance together like flame and shadow. Years pass. The Greeks become Persianized. Their children learn to respect the fire temples, even if they don't understand them. Gulnar trains new keepers, teaching them the practical skills, but also the harder lesson, that purity and prison can be the same word. She grows old by the flame. Her hair whitens like ash. Her hands grow gnarled as ancient wood. But her eyes remain bright, reflecting the eternal fire that she's tended for 50 years. On her last night, she knows it's her last. The body has its own calendar. She sits with the flame one final time. No paten, no ceremony. Just two old friends who've shared a lifetime of watching each other burn. "Thank you," she tells it, for the company, for the purpose, for showing me that even prisoners can choose how they serve their sentences. The flame dances higher, and again she sees that figure of Fire Woman, but clearer now. It looks like her, like all the keepers who came before, like all who will come after. The eternal feminine tending the eternal flame, both trapped and free, both pure and wild, both ending and endless. She dies at dawn, still sitting upright, still watching. The new keeper finds her smiling, one hand extended toward the flame, as if reaching for a friend. They burn her body on a separate pyre. The sacred fire must not taste death. But some say that as the smoke rose from her funeral fire, it twisted and danced and joined with the smoke from the eternal flame. And for just a moment, the two fires became one. Different flames, different prisons, different women, choosing to tend what they cannot touch. But always the same paradox, that in serving something eternal, we become eternal. That in tending light for others, we ourselves become illuminated. That in accepting our constraints, we find a freedom that wild things never know. The Persian flame burns on. Through Alexander's empire and its collapse, through the Parthians and Sassanids, through the Arab conquest and the diaspora. It burns still in India, in Iran, in the hearts of those who remember. And somewhere in that eternal flame, Gulnar tends still, not her body, that went to ash centuries ago, but her choice, her acceptance, her transformation of prison into practice, duty into devotion, necessity into something almost like love, good thoughts, good words, good deeds, and the hardest good of all, learning to find freedom in the flame that binds you. The fire-keeper joins the eternal flame, and now, at the place where all times meet, all their voices blade into one immortal song. Here, at the end that is also the beginning, all their voices braid into one song. Listen, do you hear them converging? Like streams finding the sea? Like smoke rising from 1,000 temples? Like the collective breath of every woman who ever chose God over lover? They are all here, all now, all always. Time folds in on itself like silk scarves in a dancer's hands, and suddenly you can see the pattern that was always there, hidden in the individual threads. The oracle speaks prophecy in a tongue that died 2,000 years ago. The Vestal tends a flame that was extinguished when Rome fell. The sacred prostitute opens her arms to worshippers who are dust and memory. The Last Priestess of Isis performs rituals for gods relegated to museum placards. The Devadasi dances for a stone husband in a temple that's now a tourist site. The Desert Mother fasts in a cave that's been empty for centuries. The Persian Fire-Keeper breathes through a padan that crumbled to threads generations ago. They are all here, all now, all impossibly, eternally present in this space outside time, where every sacred woman who ever lived gathers to discover they were always one woman, living one life, making one choice over and over across the centuries. Watch how they recognize each other, not with surprise, but with the deep knowing of mirrors reflecting mirrors. The oracle sees her own possession in the Devadasi's divine dance. The Vestal recognizes her careful tending in the Persian's sacred flame. The Hierodule finds her sacred sexuality echoed in the ritual marriage of Isis and Osiris. They were different notes in the same chord, different verses of the same ancient song, Sisters, the oracle says, and her voice carries all their voices. We were never alone. We were always alone, the desert mother corrects gently. But alone together, alone in the same way, alone for the same reason. They stand in a circle, or perhaps they sit, or perhaps they dance. In this place, all positions are simultaneous. The young ones still fresh with the shock of divine claiming. The old ones worn smooth by decades of service. The ones who died young, burned out by the intensity of carrying heaven in human vessels. The ones who lived to see their traditions end, their temples fall, their gods forgotten. But look closer. See how the circle expands. Behind each ancient priestess stand others, shadows becoming solid, future echoing past. Christian nuns in black habits, Buddhist nuns in saffron robes, Hindu sadhvis with shaved heads, Muslim mystics behind veils, Jewish contemplatives separate from the world, different names, different rules, different gods, but the same essential transaction. We are the thread, they say together, and their combined voice shakes reality. The scarlet thread running through history. The women who chose the eternal over the temporal, who paid for transcendence with loneliness, who bought heaven with their wombs. In the center of their circle, something takes shape. Not light, not darkness, but the space between. The pause where light becomes dark, where exhale becomes inhale, where human becomes divine. It pulses like a heart. This nothing that is everything, and each woman recognizes it. It's what they served, what they married, what they became. The oracle steps forward. I gave my voice to the god, spoke truths that cracked minds open. But the cost was never being heard as myself. The hierodule follows. I gave my body to the goddess, became the bridge between flesh and spirit. But the price was never being touched with personal love. The Vestal. I gave my purity to the state, kept the flame that kept Rome eternal. But I burned without warmth, existed without living. The Egyptian priestess. I gave my life to mysteries, married death to preserve the sacred. But I watched my world die and couldn't follow. The Devadasi. I gave my name to the dance, became art itself, beauty incarnate. I forgot who I was beneath the bells and silk. The Desert Mother. I gave everything to nothing, stripped down to essential emptiness. But in losing all, I found. She pauses, smiles. I found what can't be lost. The Fire-Keeper. I gave my breath to purity, spoke to flame through sacred cloth. But the fire and I, we were the same, prisoners who learned to love ourselves. They speak their sacrifices like rosary beads, each loss polished smooth by handling. But something else emerges in the speaking. Not regret, not bitterness, something harder to name. We were the price, the oracle says suddenly, understanding blooming in her God-touched eyes. The price the world paid for touching transcendence. Someone had to stand at the threshold. Someone had to be the door. We were the doors. Doors get walked through, the Vestal observes. Doors don't get to walk through themselves. But doors connect, the hierodule adds. Doors make passage possible. Without us, the sacred and profane would never meet. They look at each other with new understanding. All these centuries of seeing themselves as sacrifices, as victims of divine appetite, as women denied ordinary happiness. But what if they were something else? What if they were necessary? Not just to their individual traditions, but to the human project itself. Every culture creates us, the Desert Mother says slowly. Every society sets aside certain women to carry the burden of the sacred, to be the professional prayers, the dedicated virgins, the ones who choose God so others can choose life. We are the tithe, the Egyptian priestess whispers, the 10% given to heaven so the 90% can flourish on earth. In the center of their circle, the pulse of nothingness brightens, or darkens, or simply becomes more itself. And suddenly they can see forward as well as back, see the convents yet to be built, the women yet to take vows, the ones who will shave their heads in mountain monasteries, the ones who will wall themselves into anchor holds, the ones who will have visions in medieval chambers, the ones who will write the masculine god a love letter in feminine hand. What do we tell them? The Devadasi asks. What wisdom do we leave for our daughters in the spirit? They consider this, these women who paid the ultimate price for divine intimacy. What do you tell someone about to make the same bargain? What warning? What encouragement? What truth? Tell them, the Desert Mother begins, then stops. Starts again. Tell them the loneliness is real. The sacrifice costs everything. The divine touch leaves scars that never heal. But tell them also, the Fire-Keeper adds, that scars are just another kind of writing, that loneliness shared becomes communion, that what we sacrifice returns to us transformed. Tell them they have choices we didn't. The Vestal says firmly, they can leave, can change their minds, can define their own terms of service. But tell them too, the Hierodule smiles, that choosing the old terms, the hard terms, the terms that demand everything, there's power in that. Power in being the mountain rather than the climber. Tell them to remember their names, the Devadasi pleads. I forgot mine, and with it, I forgot I was human. The dance is beautiful, but dancers need rest. Tell them that God isn't always kind, the oracle warns. Divine possession hurts. Prophecy burns. The truth you speak may destroy what you love. But tell them, the Egyptian priestess adds softly, that kindness isn't the only virtue, that some things are worth the burning, that destruction makes space for creation. They could go on forever, these women who contain forever. But dawn is coming, not to this place outside time, but to the world where their stories are remembered, where women still choose the veil over the wedding dress, where daughters still disappear into convents, where the sacred feminine still demands her tithe of loneliness. One last thing, the Desert Mother says. Tell them we're proud. Proud of every woman who chooses the difficult path, who feeds flames, who speaks for gods, who dances prayers, who becomes the bridge others cross. Tell them we're waiting, the oracle adds, here in the place between, when their service ends, when their bodies fail, when their traditions die, we'll be here, the eternal sisterhood of women who chose God over man. Tell them they're not alone, they all say together. We're never alone. We'll never be alone. The thread continues. The flame burns. The dance goes on. And then, like dawn finally remembering to break, they begin to fade. Not disappearing, but dispersing, returning to their times, their places, their individual stories, but changed, connected, part of something larger than any single sacrifice. The oracle returns to her tripod. But now she knows a Devadasi dances the same possession in a different tongue. The Vestal tends her flame, But now she feels the Persian fire-keeper tending hers across the miles. The hierodule opens to the goddess, knowing a priestess performs the same sacred marriage beside the Nile. They are alone in their bodies, but together in their souls, separated by time, but united in eternity. And somewhere, in a convent not yet built, a woman not yet born feels a strange warmth, as if ancient hands are braiding her hair, as if forgotten voices are whispering in her ear, as if she's joining a procession that started before time and will continue after time ends. She doesn't understand, not yet. But when the moment comes, when she stands at the altar, when she speaks her vows, when she chooses the ring that marks her as heaven's bride, she will. She'll feel them all standing with her. Every woman who ever made this choice, every daughter who ever paid this price, every soul who ever decided that touching the eternal was worth an eternity of loneliness. The thread continues, red as blood, strong as silk, unbroken despite all the breaking it contains. From oracle to nun, from priestess to sister, from then to now to always, the sacred feminine requires her sacrifices, and we, the willing ones, the lonely ones, the chosen and choosing ones, we pay. We pay with everything we are for everything we might become. And in the paying, in the choosing, in the long, lonely vigil between earth and heaven, we discover the secret. We were never the sacrifice. We were the altar. We were never the loss. We were the finding. We were never alone. We were the thread itself, weaving through time, binding heaven to earth with our bodies, our choices, our beautiful and terrible yes to the God who demands everything and gives back nothing but himself. And somehow, ask any of us, in any century, in any habit or veil or sacred dress, somehow that's enough. More than enough. That's everything. We've traveled through centuries tonight, breathed the sacred vapors with the oracle, climbed the ziggurat with the sacred bride, tended flames that must never die, danced until our feet bled for gods of stone, fasted in the desert until we became the emptiness we sought. Each story different in its details, identical in its essence. Women choosing the eternal over the everyday, paying for transcendence with the currency of ordinary life. If you're still awake, if these ancient voices stirred something in the darkness of your own heart, leave a candle emoji in the comments below. Light a small flame for these forgotten mothers of monasticism, these pioneers of sacred solitude. Your small gesture joins with theirs across the centuries. Another point of light in the darkness. Another thread in the tapestry of devotion. But whether you sleep or wake, know this. Their stories continue. In convents where sisters rise at 3 a.m. to sing the divine office. In temples where women still dance their prayers. In hermitages where souls seek God through subtraction. In every place where someone chooses the difficult path of divine service over the easier path of human love. Rest now, dear wanderer. Let their whispers fade into your dreams. Let their loneliness lull you into the sweetest sleep. Dream of temples and flames, of dances and prophecies, of all the ways humans have reached for heaven throughout history. But when you wake, remember, Holiness has always demanded its price. That price has always been paid primarily by women. And somehow, mysteriously, beautifully, terribly, it has always been worth it. Not for what it gives the individual, but for what it gives the world. A bridge, a door, a thread connecting earth to heaven. Next time on The Sleepless Nun, we follow the thread forward to a garden in Hippo where Monica's sun burns with questions too dangerous to ask aloud. To the moment when women's sacred loneliness first learns to speak Latin. When the old goddesses put on new faces and the eternal bride exchanges her many names for one, sister. We'll meet the desert mothers who fled to the Sahara, the anchoresses who walled themselves into churches, the mystics who wrote love letters to God in their own blood. The thread continues, red and unbroken, from them to now. Until then, dear one, sleep in the arms of the ancient silence. The same silence that held them holds you now. Oracle and nun, priestess and sister, all of us together in the great communion of souls who have touched the eternal and live to tell or not tell the tale. Sweet dreams, wanderer. May you wake refreshed, knowing you are part of an ancient story. A story of sacrifice and transcendence, of loneliness transformed into communion, of women who gave everything and discovered that everything sometimes is exactly what God requires. The candle burns low. The story ends. But the thread continues, weaving through your dreams, connecting you to every sacred woman who ever chose the harder path. Sleep now. They are watching over you. All of them. Always.